Jordan Peterson said another dumb thing. I know this isn't typical pillar of garbage content, but I made a similar video a couple of months back after seeing Jordan Peterson's car crash appearance on BBC Question Time, and that's still doing fairly well, even months on, so I thought, hey, why not make a follow-up? Because he said something else a little bit silly.
Now, in many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because at one point there was only one book.
Now, it's immediately unclear what Peterson meant by this claim, and for a guy with such a massive throbbing boner for specificity, that's not a great start. There's a few things he could have meant by this statement, but they're pretty much all wrong, and all kind of stupid to one degree or another.
Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And for a while, literally, there was only one book. And that book was the Bible.
Peterson likes to talk about Western civilization, but what is Western civilization? One thing that's sometimes meant by that vaguely dog-whistly phrase is European civilization. Is this what Peterson is claiming here? Well, the first Bibles didn't come into existence until the Common Era, after the death of Jesus Christ, because canonical books like the Gospels and Revelation hadn't been written until this point. The modern Bible wasn't put together until later still, with the biblical canon being solidified in the councils of Hippo and Carthage in 393 and 397. Needless to say, there are an innumerable number of books from before this point. Even just looking at the time period in which Jesus was vibing around in Judea, there's any number of way older extant works of European literature. But remember, the Bible is a collection of many distinct works, ancient Hebrew songs, poems, prophecies, and the like. And according to believers, the earliest 5 books, the Pentateuch, were written by Moses several hundred years before the earliest written Greek literature. Now again, most secular historians disagree, dating the Pentateuch around the 6th century BC, thus after early Greek works, such as the Homeric epics and the works of Hesiod. But just to show you how wrong Peterson is, let's suppose that the modern academic consensus is wrong, and the true believers are right, and let's expand our category from the purely European. If Peterson was talking specifically about Western civilization, and Western civilization for Peterson meant Europe plus the literary works of the Semitic languages of the Middle East, and if by book he meant literary work, then hey, he's still wrong. The Epic of Gilgamesh would take that particular prize. But something tells me Peterson's fanbase have less invested in the transcendent literary virtues of Enkidu than they do in Christ, so I could see why Peterson might skip over Gilgamesh, but still wrong, and that's even with my very generous and creative interpretation of what Peterson might have been trying to talk about. Another option is that Peterson meant that the Bible was the original book in the Christian tradition. Christianity, as well as its associated morals and works of art, is sometimes taken to be the key factor when people talk about Western civilization. Now, I doubt many of the people using this label would include Ethiopia in their definitions of Western civilization, but hey, cognitive dissonance is a real trip. In such a definition, yeah, sure, I guess the Christian Bible would be the original primordial text for Christian society, but that's such an obvious and uninteresting observation to make that I have trouble believing even Lobster Boy here would suggest it. I mean, it's like claiming that Star Wars is the original first text for the Star Wars fandom. Like, yeah, no shit, what exactly is your point here? Some Reddit gremlins commenting on the matter suggest that Peterson meant the Bible was the first book to be printed and widely disseminated in medieval Europe, which A, is a very tortured reframing of Peterson's words, and B, you guessed it, also wrong. Now, we don't know exactly what the first book Johannes Gutenberg printed was, after he'd invented the first European device utilising movable type, but we do know that various items preceded his famous Bible, such as German poems and Latin school books. So, not the first to be printed then, but hey, these Western civilization types are usually pretty Anglophilic. Maybe they meant the first book to be printed in English. Let me just check my notes. Yep, poppycock. William Caxton printed the first English book in 1473, and it was a translation of a French poem about the Trojan War. Caxton named his book The Recueil of the Histories of Troy, which, fun fact, I've actually previously read parts of. Not a page-turner, but also not a Bible. Okay, but was the printed Bible the first book to be widely disseminated in medieval Europe? Well, not really. It was widely disseminated, but so were plenty of previous non-printed books, primarily romance fictions of King Arthur and the like, Latin poems and grammar books copied down from ancient manuscripts, and, oh yeah, previous non-printed versions of the Bible. So yeah, if that's what Peterson meant, it's not much more accurate. And there was going to be another section here about how he could have been conflating the etymologies of Bible and the Greek word biblos, which has entered everyday usage as a word-forming element seen in words like bibliography, bibliophile, or whatever. And that would have been a fun segment where I debunked such a connection and told a little story about the papyrus sourcing in the ancient world, and how we actually got the word biblos, and how the Bible took its name from that Greek root and not the other way around. But when I went back and reread the Peterson quote, it's clear he's talking somewhat literally, which, as we've seen, is easier to debunk, but it also means I can't tell my fascinating etymology story. So thanks, Peterson, for saying something so dumb and literal that I can't even use it as an excuse to talk about the Bronze Age, which I love, by the way. It's super cool. It would have made a really fun segment. Sorry, I got a little off track there, but there you have it. Jordan Peterson said another dumb thing, this time an outright lie about the Bible being the original book, and that's funny. Maybe the stress of no longer being a tenured academic finally got to him. Or maybe it's the brain damage from that self-induced coma. Either way, it's funny, so let's all point and laugh at Lobster Boy together. And that's it, so I'd like to thank my patrons on screen now, especially Ian Fifield.